Hello, Kris Johnson. How are you doing?
Man, I'm great. How you doing, Dr. Thunder?
I'm all right. I'm all right.
Good, good.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Uh, I've known you for a while now. I think the first time we played together was in the Cab Calloway band in
It
Detroit,
sure was. That's right. Absolutely.
and it wasn't too long after that uh, that you came to Ohio State to interview for a position.
Yeah, man, I want to say it was definitely within a year that I
Right.
came and ended up, auditioning there. So,
And of course, you got the gig.
right. Yes, sir. See, look at us. We said auditioned, interviewed.
Oh yeah, that's right. Auditioned for the gig. That's right.
Right.
Interviewed for the gig. I could take my professor hat off.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So, of course, you did a great job at Ohio State, and
Appreciate
we
it, man.
made a lot of great music and everything else, and I got to learn more about you, and I think we became you know really became good friends during that time.
Oh, absolutely.
So I guess we're still friends. You moved to Utah on me,
I
but
know, man. I know. Forgive me. Forgive me.
why don't you uh, tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. I'm
Like
a
like
trumpeter,
yeah, like where
composer,
you're
arranger,
from, where'd
all
you
that
grow
stuff.
up, all
Okay.
that kind
Yeah, I
of
got you.
childhood and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Trumpeter, composer, arranger, and educator from Detroit, Michigan. Born in Detroit, raised in Southfield. I'm a product of Damian Crutcher's program at Southfield Lathrop High School. I always tell people, no Damian means no Kris. He had a profound impact on me, musically and personally. Went on from there, participated in civic youth ensembles through the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, University of Michigan youth ensembles, as well as Michigan State, and ended up at Michigan State for both my bachelor's and master's degree in jazz studies, studying under the great Derek Gardner, Wycliffe Gordon, Rodney Whitaker, Diego Rivera, Rick Rowe, Randy Gillespie, just so many great musicians. And after Michigan State, I actually found myself teaching for the Detroit Symphony Orchestra as well as touring with the Count Basie Orchestra. And after years and years of of touring with that group, I ended up, teaching at Ohio State University as well as the University of Utah, where I was director of jazz studies for 4 years. And now I'm back in Michigan full time, working as a freelance composer, an online educator, with my web series Office Hours with Kris Johnson, and yeah, doing a lot of writing, a lot of studio work, and yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
so tell us a little bit about how you started and why trumpet in
Mm.
particular.
So, one of my earliest memories of trumpet is actually at church. I remember there was a musical that they used to do every year, and my dad would actually play bass in the pit. And my cousin, my younger cousin Lauren, as young as she was, she would actually play drums because she was just smashing, even at a very young age. But I remember someone had a trumpet in the pit and allowed me to kind of like try to buzz on the mouthpiece, and I got a sound out. So this is like pretty early on. And then, come fifth grade, they do the big like instrument rally, show and tell, instrument farm, whatever thing, whatever you want to call it. And they had all the instruments lined up. And I remember I ran straight to the trumpet, was like, I remember I could get a sound out of that. And I tried it. Then I went on and was a very, very mediocre music student for a number of years. Um, wasn't that great in middle school, took a couple private lessons, but it just didn't really stick. Freshman year of high school, I was second to last chair in the marching band. And I remember one day Damian Crutcher stopped the entire band and he's like, Johnson, I see you over there. You don't know your steps and you don't know your parts. I see you. You better practice your part. You think I can't hear you, but I can. And it just like freaked me out. I was completely freaked out. And so I started staying every day, like after school and getting there early because my sister was on the cheerleading team. And so she would, be there for rehearsal and she was my ride to school. And so every day I was like, man, he ain't never gonna yell at me again. I'm gonna get this together, started just shedding out of fear. And then next thing I know, a few months later, we did auditions for, symphonic band. And I went from being second to last chair in the entire school to being third chair in the top band. And I was like, oh shoot, okay, I'm actually kind of like decent at this. And I started to just fall in love with listening to music. I remember my brother took me to the Detroit Jazz Festival. Um, you know, this is probably maybe summer after freshman year, somewhere around there. And the first time I heard somebody take a solo, like play jazz and take an improvised solo, like I was hooked. I was hooked from there. I realized like, man, there's something about that freedom and expression. And I started to really fall deeply for music. Specifically playing music. I always was a lover of listening. And yeah, man, trumpet just kind of spoke. I knew right away that I wanted to compose. I knew right away that I
Yeah.
wanted to do, all the things that I saw people do. Anytime I saw somebody do something musically, I was like, man, I want to do that too. I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And I really did struggle at first. I was tone deaf at one point, very early on, like as a young kid. I couldn't really hear pitch. I couldn't. You could sing a note to me, I couldn't sing it back to you. And so I had some hurdles to overcome, but fought through it. Ended up at Michigan State, and the rest is history for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up the composing and arranging thing because you're really a rare. Uh, you have a rare skill level
Appreciate that,
at
man. Thank you.
composing and arranging, and some of the best uh, arrangements and compositions I've ever heard came
Oh
from
man,
your pen.
appreciate you. Appreciate you.
Yeah, that was one thing I was particularly pleased with when you were at Ohio State. Is just the level of the writing, because you directed the Art Blakey combo,
Right.
and just the level of the writing that you were constantly doing for that group. It was just really terrific.
Thank you, man.
And and now, what is it about writing that is appealing? I mean, that's there's I'm sure there's lots of things about it that
Of
are
course.
appealing,
Of course.
but what are some things that really turn you on about writing?
Man, there's a couple pieces. I mean, one, I have this, I don't know, I think natural ability slash obsession with order and things being organized and things making sense. And so this idea that, musicians could be on stage and creating, even before I had the ability to write, creative arrangements, I was very much so concerned with efficiency and really thinking about how can I efficiently put together sheet music that will
Mm,
represent what people are playing. How can I organize this? I remember even for myself learning arrangements by ear and really struggling because my ear was like really, really rough early on. And so I would always write things out, and I felt like, man, there should be really clear sheet music for this to aid musicians. Of
mm,
course, I learned later that obviously there's a whole other sort of cognitive development that happens by learning it by ear. And so it's very, obviously, very positive to learn things by ear. But there was something about being organized, and there's also something about just the beauty of how different songs could sound depending on who arranged them. So I remember early on, I used to go to these workshops that Harold McKinney would do at the Serengeti Ballroom. The Serengeti Ballroom at the time was on Woodward, right down the street from Orchestra Hall. You'd walk up these stairs to like this old beat up ballroom, and you pay $5, and you get to play a song for Harold McKinney, and he'd like workshop. So we're in high school, and there's like grown musicians in the area that are all coming to get instruction from him. But I remember him taking out some sheet music and very quickly just writing out an arrangement to four, and just the harmonies that he brought with the group, it just sounded so different even from the recordings I heard. And there was just so much power in something as simple as assigning people notes. So
mm,
I think right from there, and then of course hanging out with Marcus Belgrave, and I mean I was really spoiled that I was around Wycliffe Gordon and I was around Derek Gardner. I remember
yeah.
sitting in Rodney's office and sitting down at the piano, and he would show me how to like form chords and melodies together. It was really something for me to be able to create these sounds and then to be able to have a group play them. Is just like a super addictive feeling.
Yeah.
um yeah. Yeah. So I think for me, it's a matter of being able to express myself on a higher level than I think that I necessarily can just through improvisation, and then also being able to bring groups of people together and to make something beautiful out of that.
Yeah, yeah. So you're a control freak then. That's
I'm
what
an
you're saying.
absolute control freak. That's pretty much what I just said. I'm gonna
Yeah, right,
have
right,
to
right, right.
edit that
So
out later.
that's right,
Yeah.
right. That's all of that stuff you said. That's all I heard.
Yeah.
No, of
Exactly.
course I'm teasing you. And when I said earlier that, I mean, Kris Johnson is one of my best friends.
Oh,
Kris Johnson
yeah.
is one of my best friends, and
My man. Absolutely.
yeah, and I've learned a lot about composition. I've learned a lot about arranging. I've learned a lot about just playing with passion,
Mm.
and something else. And you said this obsession with order that you have. You're also a copyist.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, and some of the cleanest, best looking charts you've ever seen. You haven't even heard them yet, but it's already a thing of beauty. You know.
Right. And honestly, that I remember that. I remember that being a thing for me is again, even before I could even understand or hear the harmonies that Harold McKinney would write out or Marcus Belgrave, I remember just getting the sheet music and being excited. And of course, these were handwritten; these weren't done on a computer. But I remember being excited about the music, just with the style. I love the way that the treble clefs look, and so like the style of the music was something that was really important too, in terms of just getting it to look right. And to me, if it looked right, it had a better chance of sounding right.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, so you're a smart guy. It seems like uh, you could do anything. I mean, you pretty much could do anything else, and you're kind of a nerd.
A little bit, just
You're kind of a nerd.
right,
I am too. Uh,
right.
you might be a little more nerdy than I am.
I don't know,
Um,
man. I'm looking at your studio setup right now. It's pretty.
it's
Mine's
pretty
pretty
nerdy.
nerdy, and you actually play all those instruments in the background, man. You see some like couple ones here that I can't touch yet, but
But so stuff like with finale,
mhm.
you're like the finale whisperer.
All right, I'll
uh,
take it. I'll take it.
yeah, yeah. It's a trademark right there. Yeah, you have a unique uh, understanding of that software. I know you've been using it for a long time,
Very long time.
and you seem to be quite an advocate of that software. Not freezing anybody else out that uses other software,
Of
but
course, of
you
course.
seem to be quite an advocate for that software. What about that software is um, talk to me about the software.
Well, there's two parts to it. First of all, when I was at Southfield Lathrop, um, uh, Jeff Martin actually was one of my teachers, and we had a music tech class. We actually had a MIDI lab, and we were probably one of the first schools that
Mm,
had a MIDI lab because we had this fine arts academy there. And I mean, I was learning like cakewalk, and I didn't even realize how spoiled I was at the time. But I was recording audio and working with MIDI, and it's funny, I actually got away from it and didn't do any of that in college. I mean, we
mm,
didn't touch anything related to the computer unless it was Finale all throughout college. But in high school, I was exposed to it, and I think we had like a like a DAT machine anyway. And I remember Finale was one of the programs. I mean, this must have been, I think Finale 99 was when I first got started.
oh yeah, yeah.
Now, I couldn't afford to have it on my own personal computer, but I was working with Noteworthy Composer, if you remember that.
Oh yeah. Uh
Yeah, I
huh.
had Noteworthy Composer on my personal computer, but at school I had access to Finale, so I was working with it there. And honestly, I just dove right in. I had a cracked copy of it all throughout college,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of roll with it. To me, there wasn't really another option. It was either Noteworthy Composer, which there was no comparison between that and Finale, and I just rolled with Finale. It just was what it was. the thing that I've noticed, some of the limitations that I've seen people run to with some other softwares, in terms of being able to really customize the look of the chart, both in terms of fonts and spacing, certain customizations like with exploding and imploding music. I just know it very well. I can't even really speak to the limitations of the other program as much because I just don't work with it. But pretty much anything that I want to do, I can sit down a Finale and within seconds I can start creating music and have it set up where it looks really good. I'm working off of templates that I've spent a lot of time building with like my chord fonts and the page formatting. And so I'm able to get the charts to look and sound good very, very quickly. It's just about being streamlined. At this point, even if there was a software that, was supposedly better, I think it would interrupt my workflow so much that it wouldn't even be worth
Yeah,
it,
right, right.
you know? Um, so yeah, it works for me, but I'm definitely not against others who choose to use something else because you got to use what works for you. It's like a reed or a mouthpiece or whatever. If it works for you, then great. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, in the book that we did together,
Right.
it's interesting that Hal Leonard wanted the files in Finale.
Right.
They wanted it
Yeah.
in Finale format, and um, it seems like that's somewhat of an industry standard with publishers.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and I've noticed I'm nowhere near uh, the the wizard at Finale that you are, but I'm very competent, and I can make stuff. Uh, I can, if I can think of what it is, I can figure out how to do it in that software. I have an unusual uh, an unusual way to deal with key signatures as it relates to chord scales.
Right. Right.
The key signature matrix, which of course that didn't make it into the book. That book could have been like this. We have to keep cutting it down,
That's right, man.
cutting
We'll
it
have to
down.
make like the King James version, the
Yeah.
new standard. Yeah.
And but with that system, there's actually a way in Finale to create custom key signatures.
Right. Right.
Uh, and I don't know of another software that you have that kind of, flexibility. Now,
Right.
it's pretty cumbersome. Now, that could be something that
Oh,
I think that
definitely.
they could tweak and improve a little bit.
Right.
But even for the fact that it's even possible,
Right.
you know, uh, is really great about that software. And all of my composing and stuff has been in Finale.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But now I go back a little bit further than you, and so I
Just a
started.
few years. Just a few years.
So I first got exposed to it in '95, which is when I
Mm,
think the software came out,
wow.
and it's pretty much been the same engine the whole time. They've tweaked and
Right.
improved it. If you understood older versions of the program, then you can use newer versions of the
For sure.
program,
For sure.
that kind of thing. So let me ask you about some projects that you're involved in, that you have worked on. I mean, I know that you played in the Count Basie Orchestra, and we actually played in that band together.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I've never been a member, actual member of the band. I was subbing, but that was very cool. I think, what was it, like a couple tours, a couple mini
Oh yeah.
tours or
Yeah. We
something
did a
that we
couple
did.
tours together, which was
Yeah,
fantastic, man. It was great to be able to do that.
yeah, it was a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
that band has such a great history, and music is, and nobody plays like that band.
No.
It's
No.
the only thing on earth that's anywhere similar to that.
Yeah. It's a very, very specific thing for sure.
Oh, it
Yeah.
really is. Definitely plays the blues.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, what are some, other projects that you've worked on, and what have been some of your favorite projects to have worked on?
Man. Um, there's like way too many. Um, I'd say recently I've really been having a great time creating music with a lot of my peers that are releasing different projects and recording horn sections or solo work and being able to collaborate with great artists like Sasha Casparigo as well as Darrell Campbell. I did some stuff with my keyboardist John Dixon, who was releasing like some techno projects and recording some trumpet, for stuff like that.
Mm.
I'd say recently one of my favorite projects has definitely been working on my fiance's album, Lulu Fall. Just released her project Between Two Worlds, which really turned out beautifully. I served kind of as like a project, director for that. Arranged a few songs as well as just kind of helped organize all the sessions, and it turned out really beautifully. I love being able to take large visions and large projects and being able to make them manageable, breaking them down into small steps. That's the administrator in me, I guess. But to actually be able to make the projects reasonable, take them from being like very large scale into really seeing it through. In terms of my own personal projects, I've been kind of diving into a different direction lately. I just released I just released my first audio visual album. Where
Yeah,
I
I was
actually
just going to ask you
created,
about that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I created all the original artwork, self-produced everything, performed as well. It's called Safe, available at chrisjohnsonmusic.com. I'm sure you're going to put all the links and all that stuff. But that particular project, I'm kind of getting into something different where, I think a lot of times we get used to part of the tradition is definitely playing standards and playing songs that are, from the American Songbook and are from, the artists that we love and respect. And all of that's very, very important. And a lot of times we release projects and it's either a combination of that and some original music. But this is the first kind of like just straight concept album where it was really kind of like I call it like a self-help tape. It was really about reflecting on some personal experiences, reflecting on life, reflecting on the healing process, and reflecting on kind of claiming my place in the world and my place in terms of my mental health and where I was. And to be able to create a project that kind of reflected what I was personally going through and fighting through was really impactful. So that's definitely going to be a major part of my work moving forward. Yeah, just experimenting with a lot of things. I'm doing a looping project right now where I'm just experimenting with a lot of different, playing different instruments and looping them together in order to create textures, but not so it can be like record a loop and play a 12-bar blues, but more so like compositions that are
Yeah.
arranged specifically for a loop in which it feels like a cohesive performance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's very cool. I checked out at least one of those that you've done. I
oh,
think
cool.
you've released like a couple of those now.
Yeah, I've only shot two of them, and I did release two of them very recently.
Yeah, yeah, and that was very cool.
Thank you.
I like the looping, technology.
Oh, for sure.
What's possible to do with that,
Yeah.
and actually uh, as part of my doctoral studies, I did a research paper on the history of live looping.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And one thing that people don't really, I think they don't know this fully, is that Victor Wooten really is responsible for like 100% of that. Um,
Interesting.
yeah. There were a couple things that happened before him, but they were done on machines that weren't really designed to do
Hmm.
looping.
Hmm.
Um, uh, uh, they were machines that over time would degrade and the single signal could go down to zero. It was like a
Right.
delay unit.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, but Victor really took that whole thing and made it a real thing. I mean,
Wow.
and he has such incredible chops.
Oh, yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah, just incredible chops. And I mean, he does this thing where he'll play a line backwards. He's playing down a cascading scale, and he's playing all the notes backwards, and then you hear what it actually is at the end, and it's like incredible that somebody can have that kind of control to be able to
Oh,
do
yeah.
that,
Yeah. Incredible.
in live setting. But the whole live looping thing, I think it's so now you have like you got people like Jacob Collier,
Hmm.
and you have like sort of live looping bands, which will be like two people. One's doing more of the percussion stuff, and the other one's doing more of the chordal and
Oh, yeah.
melody stuff. You have a lot of singers. They play guitar and they sing and stuff, but like 99% of it these days, it's just I'm always left wanting, I'm always left wanting to wanting it to be more than two sections,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sort of super simple harmonic content,
Right.
and it
Right.
just seems like there's other things that can be done with it. So I
Yeah.
was excited to see that you were, you're dealing with that because because I know how you think. So
And it is challenging. I mean, I think one of the challenges is that the more complex, the longer of a sequence that you put together, the more challenging it is to track that live. So, but I'm
and the
kind of
longer it takes to develop, so that it's like you're going to start losing the audience. So you have to figure
exactly,
out how to,
exactly.
yeah,
So
it's
I'm kind of playing with some textures of some elements that can repeat and be on a shorter loop, and then a larger progression
yeah,
that still supports that shorter element. It's kind of what I'm experimenting with. This next time, as I'm going through, I'm actually working on a new piece. I'm actually going to be incorporating my sample library from my laptop, and really incorporating
yeah,
using MainStage, as well as a couple of different instruments. Just experimenting a bit more. Uh, You know, I just think it's interesting. Of course, I can arrange for a big band or an orchestra or a wind ensemble or a choir or whatever, and that's great. But to be able to create all the textures yourself, it's just a different way. And I think, especially when you're dealing with like very personal music that is reflective on personal experiences, it's only
yeah,
appropriate that it comes from within. So, it's
yeah,
along for the
yeah.
ride.
Very cool.
Yeah, man.
So, so I mean, you've talked about musicians that were instrumental,
Mhm.
when you were coming up, and
Yeah,
teachers that really inspired you
for sure.
and poured into you. For in your musicianship, what artists in particular, maybe they're not ones that you've interacted with, but
Right.
what artists in particular have been, um, you know, influential, and which ones do you still draw inspiration from?
Man, again, it's a very long list. You know, from a compositional standpoint, um, Duke Ellington, Thad Jones, and Frank Foster, uh, Ernie Wilkins, especially in terms of big band writing, are just huge influences on me and my style. Their use of harmony, their use of tension and release, the how epic their arrangements are, how much detail is put into even harmonizing just one note, the different ways in which they utilize a rhythm section. Those are all things that really appeal to me. Um, a very early influence for me, I'd say, like, maybe senior year of high school, was Terence Blanchard. I remember his album Jazz and Film. I mean, it really kind of just changed my trajectory majorly. I saw Jazz and Film, and then I went back and started watching all the Spike Lee movies that he scored. And I was like, man,
Oh
I
yeah,
have to score for film. And it's been a passion of mine. It's something that I've been very fortunate, to do on a number of different projects. But I would say that's a major influence. There would definitely be Terence Blanchard, as well as Wynton Marsalis. And you want to talk about just like scope and an epic catalog of music, man. Uh, Nicholas Payton, huge influence
oh
on my
yeah,
writing, particularly Gumbo Nuevo, Peyton's Place, Nick at Night, and
yeah,
Dear Louie. Those four
oh
albums in
yeah,
particular. I mean, all of his stuff, but those four albums in particular.
yeah.
I mean, that sound, like, I stole so much from those albums in my small group writing, and the way that
Yeah.
he could just make these smaller groups just sound larger than life. And then, of course, you get
Oh
to
yeah,
Dear Louie, where he actually has a big band available. The musicianship, the trumpet playing, the writing. Uh, the late Roy Hargrove, of course,
yeah,
um, another huge influence on the horn. Um, I'd say, my major two influences on trumpet would be Sweets Edison
hmm,
and Clifford Brown.
okay,
Those are probably the two guys that I checked out the most in terms of like learning solos and learning language. Uh, transformative. And then of course, getting out of that bag, man, there's just so much music. Dave Matthews Band was
Yeah, yeah,
honestly
yeah.
a huge compositional influence on me. Even before I was thinking about composition, just hearing it and listening to it, hearing those textures, I was obsessed with it. Even before I started writing music, um, Wu-Tang Clan, Lauryn Hill, Fugees, Sly and the Family Stone, majorly, Parliament Funkadelic, James Brown, uh, Stevie Wonder. I mean, like, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
could
yeah.
just sit here and just like
Yeah.
it probably would be very interesting just hear me just list names over and over again. But seriously, like each one of these people, for anybody watching this, like go and like check out their catalogs. Actually, a really major one. I played in this soul group, Latina Martin, who went by Latina Dinkins at the time. We went to college together, and she had a group called Soul Content, and that was like my first horn section work, like like non-jazz horn section work. And we started learning these horn arrangements from the Jill Scott live experience, and that album just like messed me up. Just listening to that band and particularly the way they played live was a profound influence. Uh, yeah, just so Jill Scott, Eric Badu. Anyway,
So this is I think one thing that so I don't like the sort of genres are for record labels.
right? Oh yeah,
That
for sure.
that's for them to sell music. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Really, what we're talking about is Black American music,
oh,
right?
absolutely. I'm totally with
And
you.
it's all really the
Okay.
same stuff, right? From
Yeah,
the church to, to the nightclub, to
right,
the to the performance hall, and
right.
it's all the same stuff.
Yes,
Social gatherings, it's all we're drawing from the same reservoir.
absolutely. Yeah, and what Nicholas Payton has written and spoken about with that really resonates with me a lot because I felt that way for a very long time, and I felt like he was really able to articulate that, in a very strong way, but in a way that I think is important that we look at, in terms of how we look at the music. I mean, I think it's even hard for me to try to categorize an artist just as an artist. It's
Right.
like, all right, well, yeah, the music of Miles Davis. You can't really say that. Like, oh yeah, play something in the style of Miles Davis. You couldn't even make him a genre because
Yeah.
like his scope was just so large. Or like,
Yeah.
play like Louis Armstrong. Well, from what era, from what album?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's
Yeah.
really, really key to go artist by artist, song by song, album by album. Note for note.
Yeah, and this so-called J word, the word that we're stuck with, this jazz word, um, has not uh, has not particularly served us well
Hmm.
because um, it's such a the word doesn't really describe anything. It's
Right.
I mean it's hard to know what it is that you're talking about because it's so diverse.
Right.
Black music is so diverse,
Yeah.
and what is referred to as being jazz is so diverse,
Yeah.
and that it's really hard to put any particular label on the music. And I know that because of the way that we are as people and the way that we tend to store a lot of information with
Right.
so that we're not bogged down, so we don't so that we have enough bandwidth to to be able to contain all the information we have. Categories become a sort of necessary evil, if you
Right.
will.
For sure.
It's kind of like that thing that happens when this happens to me more than maybe I should admit. It could be people that I work with in one capacity, so people that I work with at church,
Right.
and then I'll see them at the grocery store, and I like they have to come up to me and be like, "Hey, I was waving at you. You don't? Oh yeah." Say, how do I know you? Oh yeah. I remember. And then
I
all of
see
a
you
sudden,
every Sunday at church.
yeah, that's right. And then all of a sudden, all these details flood in,
Right.
and it's like I remember all that stuff.
That's interesting. Right.
So there's I think a reason why people tend to do that. I in particular don't. It doesn't help me or benefit me particularly because usually whatever the first experience someone has with you that's the way that you get stuck.
Mm,
So if I have a saxophone in my hand, then I'm the sax guy,
right.
right? But that doesn't really say anything about what I'm capable of doing, the other instruments or composing, arranging, or,
Yeah, for sure.
you know, the fact that I'm a fitness advocate,
Right.
or that I'm a father, and a husband,
Right. Right.
it doesn't really say anything about me. Just, that's the sax guy. And then as soon as you try to do something that's not being the sax guy, then it's like, wait a minute here. You're not the sax guy. I'm sorry. You're not allowed to play guitar, or you're not allowed to play flute.
Right.
You're the sax guy. That's my instrument. I mean, I've
Right.
had people tell me that. They see me play flute and it's like, wait a minute. You play saxophone. That's not your instrument.
Isn't that
Um,
interesting?
so it's kind of an interesting problem, I think, to try to deal with. But yeah, that whole genre thing is really about record companies trying to categorize people in a way that allows them to spend the least amount of money on marketing, so they can sell the most
Right.
recordings for the least
Right.
amount of money.
I feel you.
Um,
I do.
and that's kind of like what uh, the whole reality TV thing with the contest shows. It's
Mm,
actually a very smart technique to figure out who it is that we should put the money behind, so that we can get the most record sales.
right.
And
Right.
you you know me well enough to know that I can't stand those shows.
Uh, and it's funny though, man. Like with all this stuff, um, and and I recognize it's a bit of privilege that I've been fortunate enough to have to just not. I don't really think or worry about that stuff.
Hmm.
What I've found is that you know whether it's teaching at a university or a commission composition or putting horns on somebody's project or whatever, there's enough influx of non-personal work. I mean, maybe the commission composition thing doesn't play into that, but there's enough non-personal work that has
Right.
always paid the bills, where when I release a project, the last thing that I'm thinking about are record sales for
Right.
me personally.
Right.
My you know my teaching gig or my recording sessions or things, those things I do, and I'm like, hey, okay, I need to check off all these boxes to please someone and do things in a way where I can get this check and serve in the way that I'm supposed to serve. When I'm doing my project, literally the only thing I'm thinking about is, all right, what do I feel, what do I need, and what do I need to say? And then maybe I'll put a hat on when I'm advertising, but it's not going to compromise the music in any way.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, it's not like I'm like selling, thousands and thousands
Yeah, well,
copies of all my albums. So, but it's not about that for me, and it is for some people, and I recognize that and I respect it. But I'm very fortunate, I think, to be in a place where my music, I really treat my music as art,
right.
um, and it's art, and it's uncompromised raw art that that I'm really proud of. So,
Well, I'm
thankfully,
really proud. I'm really proud of it too.
yeah, appreciate
You
that, man.
you have a lot to say, and it's all deep, and it's provocative. It's profound, spiritual. It's all of that stuff, and
Thank you, man. Thank you.
and it's naked. And I really appreciate that, because it's not an easy thing to do, to bear all, and
Yeah,
to be exposed that way.
right.
But you sort of have to do that if you want to share certain kinds of profound art,
Oh, for sure.
you
Yeah,
know. So it's a trade that you have to take.
yeah.
Okay, so when I was in college, and in the year before I went to college in particular, there's a lot of time to practice,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
a lot of time to practice. I didn't have bills really. I didn't have a mortgage,
Right.
a spouse, kid. I didn't have a lot of the things that kind of suck away time. And so
Oh, for sure.
these days, practicing is, you know, if I'm going to get something meaningful done, I have to really be really targeted on specific things.
Absolutely.
My my question to you is, what do you practice? What kinds of things are you still engaged in as
Mm,
far as trying to improve, and what have you learned along the way to sort of be more efficient and to try to still get something meaningful out of each practice session?
for sure, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I try to be, as disciplined as I can. There's a lot that pulls my attention away. My two sons definitely
Oh yeah.
can easily pull my attention away from practicing. I'm engaged and and living with my fiance, and there's of course relational things. There's work. There's all sorts of things. So I will say I feel that sentiment of things get more complicated as you get older in terms of making the time.
Oh yeah.
But I think the major emphasis is on fundamentals of just making sure I'm establishing, pedal tones, long tones, lip slurs, flexibility, just be able to maintain that as much as possible. In addition to that, I found a certain amount of freedom in both sequential practicing and 12 tone rows. Um, it's just been something that's appealed to me for a long time of it's so difficult sometimes that when I practice those things, I find it makes other things a lot easier to not only play from a technical standpoint, but to also hear. My ear is way more open after practicing, a challenging sequence or 12 tone row because I've, especially on trumpet, you can't just press the buttons down and the notes come out. I don't think you could do that really on any instrument, but especially not on a brass instrument. You have to really be able to hear where the pitches lay.
Yeah.
And so I notice it kind of like challenges me and shocks my body and shocks my ears in a different way. Um, and then when I do have the opportunity to make music, I feel like I have more resources available in terms of facility on the instrument, etc. So yeah, sequential practicing 12 tone rows. But then what's nice too is with educational materials that I'm creating, with the teaching that I do, that's also a great opportunity as well to continue to play these melodies and continue to take things through the keys and all the fundamental things that I've always done. But honestly, those things are more second nature at this point. After spending years and years of just like kind of solidifying that skill set. So honestly, I think my playing would be in a different place if I didn't teach as much as I do, because I feel like teaching often brings you back to a fundamental or brings you back to an understanding, and even having to break down how I went about learning something allows me to actually get better at it in a sense. So uh, through teaching, I end up kind of playing a little bit of everything because it's very important to me to play along, with my students and to demonstrate.
Yeah, that's something I think we share in common is like uh, in a lesson with me, a student, I'm always going to play in
Oh,
the lesson.
absolutely.
I'm always going to play,
Yeah.
and you know, there's two sides to that. One side is because I want to model what it is
Yes.
that I'm telling the students, and I want them
Yes.
to know that I can play this stuff. I'm not telling you to do some stuff that I can't do, or to get to a level that I'm not currently also struggling to get to.
Right.
So there's that, but there's a practical thing, and that is every time I'm playing in a lesson, I'm touching my horn.
Right. Right.
I mean, that's just being real. And I remember one of our sort of initial conversations that we had just about like teaching and what happens in a lesson. I
Hmm.
remember uh, uh, thinking that we had that in common.
Oh, for sure.
That you,
For sure.
so that's very very cool. Let me ask you with this one sort of follow up to that. So do you feel like you use projects as a way to explore or to challenge yourself as far as you're playing?
Definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Um, that's hard to say. I guess I feel like I don't really separate the writing, the producing, the arranging, the teaching, the playing. To me,
It's
they're all a
all
part of the same kind of like
right.
spectrum, if that makes
Okay.
sense. So I think I'm always kind of pushing, and then it's interesting. I think for a long time I was pushing harmonically and harmonically where um, I blame Thad Jones for a very long time, even in terms of my writing. Everything was like really thick and dense, and everything was like these really like detailed textures and lots of layers and lots of dissonance. And it's funny, and and I think there, definitely points of my playing where I went through that too, of that being like the main focus. But then I went back and started learning more, kind of like some simpler, not simpler, uh, less less dense things, and more, maybe a little bit even more balanced consonant harmonies with a little bit of dissonance, and even found myself being challenged in my own playing to address the same things of, less is more, and really like honoring the dissonance, really honoring the tension, really honoring playing fast notes. Um, so I kind of find that like it's more of a push and pull between, it's not like, oh, by the time we get to 13 sharp 11, there's no turning back. It's like, no, that's great. It's beautiful that I learned that. It's beautiful that we can utilize that. What happens if I don't use it? What happens
Mm,
if I don't lean on that as this crutch and like, okay, great. I know that I can do this like big complex chord. Can you
yeah,
arrange just using a triad? How
right.
can you make triad sound good? All right, just add the ninth. You know, like
Hmm.
I find like a real beauty in finding that balance, both in terms of playing and writing, of going between the complex and the fundamental, between functional harmony and non-functional harmony, and just trying to find this like push and pull. So I think that answers your question to basically
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's interesting when you were talking. It reminded me of a conversation I had with Wooten some years ago,
Mm,
and he uh, uh, he was contrasting the idea of simple with simplistic.
mm,
And simplistic is like, even a second grader can do it.
right.
It doesn't take any education or any schooling. But simple is not easy at all.
No,
Simple is about, uh, it's like essential.
right.
It's like the distilled essence of something.
Yeah.
And I think all of us, as we're sort of discovering ourselves, and we experiment with all kinds of things, and you know, I, I like to play a lot of notes. Okay, I'm sorry. And
You're really good at it though. So
yeah,
no, no,
right,
sorry, sorry, not sorry.
right. I like to play a lot of notes, and so I feel like I still like to play a lot of notes, but I feel like I have a better reason for playing the notes that I play.
Mm,
And one thing about Coltrane is that Coltrane, he went through all that stuff where he was playing 1,000 notes and a million notes and everything
right.
else. But then you start to hear him at the end of his life,
Mm,
you know, and you see the way that his compositions, they 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 were so there was every measure is so full of like such potency. It's like he'd finally discovered how to say, you know, with the simplest thing,
right.
what it was, and it's
Isn't that
interesting.
something? Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think that's really an interesting challenge
yeah,
to go for, is to be able to work, within, to work with less, you know, to work with less and to say less and still, be even more profound. So yeah, I think it's going to be a constant battle, a constant journey of just trying to find that, and trying to find that balance. And that's really, to me, that's really what it's about. It's really about balance. It's really about trying to find balance and just trying to be, as invested as possible and as
oh,
honest as possible.
yes,
Um, you hold on to one note and you play one repeated note, you're exposed.
hmm,
People know. They can hear the difference between those notes. They can hear the honesty in it. But to me, that's just the way to be. I'd rather like crack a couple notes or make a couple mistakes and be honest than to play everything perfectly and it not mean anything.
so let's talk about the future and goals that you have. Maybe some unfinished projects, and maybe some personal growth, some things that you're aimed at.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm just trying to get married. I have a date set, but this COVID-19 stuff is, you know, definitely throwing some wrenches in a lot of people's plans. But I'm thankful to be healthy, and I have nothing to complain about. Just thankful for health. Thankfully, my family's okay. My loved ones are doing great. So we're going to see what happens with that. But that's definitely, in the near future. I recently transitioned back to Detroit from Salt Lake City, so that I could focus on, being a father. So I could focus on being with my sons. And so being present in their lives and being able to be, and to clarify, I've always been present in their lives. When I was at Ohio State, you saw me,
Oh yeah.
for years, driving back and forth between Columbus and Detroit. And when I was at University of Utah, flying back and forth in order to see them, but to be able to actually live in the same state as them, the same, time zone even, um, has been really rewarding, and having them 50% of the time is great. So focusing on that, honestly, musically, been releasing a ton of projects and live recordings and Instagram videos, and just trying to produce as much content as possible. A pretty major. Sorry, I lost you for a second. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool. Sorry, my video did something weird. Um, a pretty major project for me right now is my project Office Hours. Um, so I've got one thing that's happening with Office Hours is I actually have a bundle of about 7.5 hours worth of instructional videos and different PDFs and Finale templates and things like that about improvisation, composition, theory, technology, etc. That's all available for sale. And then I'm also kind of actually launching tomorrow a Donna Lee and all 12 keys challenge that I'm really pumped about. So I'm doing a series of videos breaking down the first 8 bars of Donna Lee and talking about a practical way of going about playing that in all 12 keys. I think oftentimes, people assign something like that and the student's like, okay, I have no idea how to approach this. So really talking about having an understanding of the theory of what a melody is and how to move it through. So for me, I think building kind of this online, structure for students to be able to study and understand music at a higher level.
Hmm.
And then one of my projects I'm working deeply on is actually a full-blown arranging course, that would be similar to about 2 semesters of instruction that I did, both at Ohio State and University of Utah, where I'm really going through how to arrange for small group and large ensemble, utilizing Logic Pro as well as Finale, instrument ranges, things like that. So I'm in the process of creating that course right now. It's going to be some time before it's available, but that's one of my major focuses, in addition to, of course, continuing to write and take on freelance projects. And really, man, I'm just spending as much time in the studio as possible, which has been really fantastic. And we're hit with this time that's really challenging for a lot of people. I'm just trying to take advantage of the time that I have available and the resources that I have down here to be able to create. So for me, it's just like I've got all the stuff to say. I've got all these, skill sets that are built up. I'm going to put it to use and do something with it, help some people, and also, express what I need to express, both as a musician as well as an educator. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to mention?
Um, you know, just keep in mind, for all the people that digest music on a regular basis, just always think about how you can support the arts, how you can support artists. Buying direct is something that's very important to me, that I always stress to people. When you can, if there's an album that I listen to a lot on Spotify, when I can, go to the artist's website and buy it from them directly, even if you never listen to the MP3s that you get emailed because you like to listen to it on Apple Music or whatever. Support them directly. Do what you can. I would also say, I think it's important to understand, for any of the students out there, you live in a day and age where there is more available in terms of technology and information than there ever has been available before. It's absolutely ridiculous how much information and misinformation there is out there. But you have so many resources available. Learn the technology, learn the common trends, take advantage of the resources you have available, and grow. Just keep growing and keep building, and understand that the world is very different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and definitely 50 to 100 years ago. So naturally, there's going to be some different musical practices. Learn them one at a time, learn what speaks to you and resonates, and take advantage of the resources you have. And shameless plug, I would definitely say, go check out the Office Hours bundle. There's a lot of material there. I've got a sale going on right now where it's only $99 for over 7 hours of material. And I don't know about you, I charge $100 for a private lesson for 1 hour. So that's kind of a crazy steal. So I'm just trying to provide resources for people to grow. You can get a lot of things in the classroom. There's also a lot of things you can learn online as well. So go get after it, get your education in. There's just really no excuse at this point. Take advantage of whatever resources you have. You know?
Yeah, thanks so much, man. I
Yeah,
appreciate
my
you.
pleasure. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Thanks for
appreciate
having
your
me.
absolutely appreciate your
Yeah,
time, and I definitely will in the description of this video. I'll be putting how you can get in touch with Kris,
appreciate it, man.
Instagram and his website
Yes,
and all
sir.
of that
Yes,
stuff.
sir.
So, thanks again, Kris, and have a good one.
My man, thanks a lot for having me, man. Appreciate it.
All right, I'll see you.
All right. Peace.